Welcome to Clean Radio on Angels Radio AM 830.
The Sober Lifestyle Show presented by Clean Residential Treatment Center, a dynamic and professional addiction treatment facility.
Clean Radio features celebrity and professional interviews covering a wide range of topics. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance in dealing with addictive disorders, call us now at 877-830-830 or go to cleanradio.com. Now your hosts for Clean Radio, Andrew and Judah.
All right, welcome to Clean Radio. It's Andrew and my co-host once again, Judah.
Once again?
Once again.
That makes it sound like I might not be.
Well, show number 5. You must be feeling lucky.
I am. I'm always feeling lucky.
I think we have to start out with the mother review.
Yes, my mother hasn't. My mother kept on asking me all week how come it hasn't. She couldn't find it on Facebook.
Oh well.
The show, because we videoed them, and she was very disappointed that she didn't get to see her son in a suit yet.
And she won't again.
And she won't again.
Oh well, I guess she will when the show goes up from last week.
Yes.
Because you were dressed up in a suit.
But you could also find it on YouTube now.
Yes. Yes, it is actually up. You can go to YouTube and just put in Clean Radio.
That's Clean with a K. Yeah.
Right, and you can watch the show. It's in 4 parts. So, yeah.
So here's an interesting thought I was thinking about, because obviously everybody's talking about Charlie Sheen, right? Mm-hmm. And all he's trying to tell people is that he doesn't have a problem.
Actually, I think he kind of admits he does have a problem, but that he fixed it miraculously on his own through his brain chemistry by pointing at his head.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like Kabbalah of getting better?
Yeah, he went home and he just magically fixed it. So, you know, we'll see how that works out.
But did you see the Alcoholics Anonymous site got hacked?
You know, honestly, just really quickly, the Charlie Sheen thing, I mean, it's been beaten to death, but if you watched him on CNN with Pierce Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
it was just a classic example for me of someone bargaining. You know, it's like, oh, I'm clean, I'm not using it anymore, you know, all these people have to get paid, you know, everything should go back to normal, you know, whatever I did was bad, but it wasn't that bad, you know, it's just a very classic example of bargaining, which we see a lot with addicts, and you know, it's just it's hard to watch. And I saw Bob Forrest the next night, who was on our show on show number 3, which I encourage people to go back and watch on the internet. But Bob came on the next night, and I thought it was really interesting what he said, where he said that really what's needed is love and compassion, and you know, some real, you know, hope and tolerance for what's going on with Charlie. So,
well, what's crazy is did you see the you know, every week the creator of the show puts up vanity cards, you
Right.
know, at the end of the show, and it's like some really like offending vanity cards. Right. So it's almost like, you know, it's like you don't know whose side to take in the, you know, it's like you're like, because, you know, he's fun to watch and you really want to root for him. I think that's part of his problem is, like, you know, it's like when I was a Yankee, I'm a huge Yankee fan. I remember growing up, you know, and Steinbrenner would always hire like Steve Howe, who had been kicked out of baseball 8 times for using cocaine, right. You know, and you were always like, you didn't know what to do. You didn't know, you know, you're like, okay, good, this guy's, you know, a Strawberry or Gooden, and these people with pure natural talent that you almost like it's you're in denial as a fan too.
Or even Mike Tyson, where someone who can, you know, abuse drugs and still function at a very high level. And we see that in all sorts of things, from executives and their jobs to, you know, people that are more famous than celebrities. But clearly, at the end of the day, there's, you know, a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that goes on. So, you know, at some point, you know, you have to be aware of what addiction is and what happens and what can be done about it.
But I just find it fascinating that even, like, if, you know, I'm in denial about it sometimes because you want to root for these people so, but, you know, that you forget what, you know, what help is needed. Right. You know, and you're like, come on, just, you know, it's like, you know, I want to see your show. Right. You know, just get back on the set. Yeah. You know, and if the number here is 877-830-830, that's 877-830-830.
Yeah, we got a great group of guests.
We do,
tonight.
actually.
It's actually probably, I think, our best lineup. I hate to say that from the other people that have been
That's okay. You can say it. They're probably not listening.
Okay, well, one of our first guests tonight is Brian Scannell, who is well known from The Town and Brotherhood and Gone Baby Gone. Great actor.
Really good. And good guy. Just all around good guy.
And we also have Alan Berger, who is a world-renowned author. He's in the top 20 list on Amazon.
Really?
With 2 books, yeah. 12 Stupid Things That Mess Up Recovery.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's...
I got to get that book.
Yeah, I think you do.
Because I can make it 24.
And then 12 Smart Things to Do When the Booze and Drugs Are Gone.
You get it, the theme, it's 12.
It's all 12.
It's all 12.
Yeah.
I should
And
probably
then
read
later
those
we
books.
got Dave Forseth joining us. He's a really good friend of mine and a great comic, sober comic, very funny guy. Got a different perspective on everything, so, you know.
So what else? Where's your wife tonight?
She's at home. She's been on tour. She's been out with Laughs Without Liquor. They did Portland and then San Francisco. So she's been really busy. Yeah, good shows though, seemingly. A lot of support. So it's good.
I gotta go see her. I've never seen your wife perform, and I make the commitment now that next time she is performing in the state of California or the city of L.A., I will be going. I'm not going traveling to San Francisco.
Well, it is kind of rated R, so you know, be ready for it.
She's making fun of you, not me.
True. I guess she is.
And I know she's listening at home, so
That's right.
I heard the show went great, Amy. Good job. And enough about us. But you know, I'm just sort of fascinated by the whole thing. You know, it's you know, you watch people in the decline, in the mental decline. It's a very scary thing watching mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean, you're that whole thing about, you know, what, you know, it's always what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And I'm really fascinated by that. Like, you know, do people treat their mental illness with drugs, or does you do so many drugs that you become, you know, something snaps and
Right.
there's no coming back?
You know, to me, it's sort of like chicken and egg thing doesn't really matter. It's like
Because you're sick.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really
At
matter.
that
You need
point-
help.
Yeah, at that point, why, you know, it's about getting help for both things and doing it in the right order and the right way. And it takes, you know, qualified professionals to really get that done.
And I think it's also important to say that, you know, you do sponsor the show. KLEAN does sponsor the show. We actually have a caller right away. And KLEAN does sponsor the show, but I don't work for you, or as I always say, yet. And
This is Judah's desperate attempt to get a job.
To get a job. But you know, this is about getting help. It doesn't matter if you go to KLEAN or you go, you know, or you go to another treatment center. If you know, if you need help, you could call us. You could call us on our private line also and get, you know, advice. What's the private number?
It's well, you can go to cleantreatmentcenter.com. It's there, but it's also 888-601-6040. But you know, really, this show we like to be about people that are already in recovery, as well as talk about people that need help with recovery. But we'd like to show that once people are actually in recovery, that there's a lot of positive things that can happen in their lives. And this show's a lot about showing the examples of, you know, people that have gotten sober and how their lives have changed for the better.
Well, I think it's really hard though these days because, you know, you see like, you know, Celebrity Rehab is like, you shouldn't be really a returning cast member. It's like one of those shows you don't want to, you know, you don't want a 5-year commitment to.
Well, Celebrity Rehab particularly cracks me up. I mean, first it was like sort of celebrities the first season, right? And then like it was mothers of celebrities like on the show, and like what are they going to do now? It'll be like, I'm on Celebrity Rehab, so I'm now famous. Like, is that what the cast is going to be? It's kind of like they're dragging. You want to actually take a call? We actually have a call.
So let's take a call from Monica.
Hi, Monica. This is Andrew. You're on there at KLEAN Radio.
Oh, hello.
How can we help you tonight?
Well, I actually have a problem. My sister, she doesn't want to admit that she has drinking problem.
Uh-huh.
And, like, I'm trying to help her. Well, you know, like, I want her to, you know, get help. She dropped out of college, and all she does is drink and, you know.
And so how old is your sister?
She's 22.
22. And has she been drinking for a long time?
Since she turned 21, actually. It's
Wow.
only been, like, almost a year.
Just about a year. And so does she normally binge drink? Does she drink a lot all at once, or do you see her drinking all the
Yeah,
time?
she
or?
kind of drinks the whole bottle, you know, like.
Wow. You know, it's tough to watch. You know, have there been consequences or things that have happened in her life because of that kind of drinking? Is she?
I don't know, nothing really. She just drinks a lot. Like her friend, you know, she got into the drinking, so.
So you think it was mostly peer pressure, and then she's kind of gotten away from her?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Al-Anon?
No.
Well, Al-Anon is for like family members, you know, so because, you know, obviously you're struggling, and it's a support group for you too that you could go, you know, and share about these types of things, so you don't have to be alone.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that's really difficult with family members is often you can feel angry or resentful or like desperate in trying to help a family member when you know, they don't see that they have a problem with either drinking or drugs. Or the drinking or drugs is trying to tell them that they don't have a problem because they want to keep doing that behavior because for them it seems like it's working. So, you know, the first and most important thing is about trying to be honest with your sister about what's going on and seeing if she's open to having a discussion about it. Have you tried talking to her about it?
Yeah, I tried, and she's always getting upset with me. Like one day she came home drunk, and she was very aggressive. Like, she wanted to hit me, you know? Like, I mean, she never drives drunk or anything, but she really, you know, she's very aggressive when she comes to drinking. When she's drunk, she'll throw anything, you know?
Right. Okay, well, you know, it's a tough situation. I would certainly start trying to, you know, have a conversation with her, even though she gets angry, and try when she's sober in the morning, after she's, you know, not actively drinking. I wouldn't try and confront her when she's drinking. And then Al-Anon is definitely a great start. But I'm going to also put you on hold.
In a second.
In a second.
Because Dr. Berger came into the studio, world-renowned Dr. Berger, and he wants to say something.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you a little feedback in terms of what you might want to think about, because I think what the questions you were being asked about, have you tried to talk to her? I mean, the worst time to try to talk to somebody that has a problem is when they're drunk or intoxicated. I mean, they're just not available. So, but I know that that's a time because there's all these feelings going on that you really want to engage the person. So the first thing, if you're going to approach her, you know, like what was being said earlier, you got to think about the time. You know, that's not the best time. So the best time would be, you know, a day later, and to sit down. See, this is the second thing, is we know how people start up a conversation is going to determine how the conversation goes. If I'm talking to Andrew, if I start out by criticizing him, you're likely to do what? Get defensive.
Get angry.
Yeah, get angry, get defensive. So if I start out saying something to him like, look, Andrew, I'm concerned, and would it be okay for you if we sat down and talked for a while? See, that creates more of a possibility between us to have an open conversation where I get to say some of the things. So, you know, we want you to think also about how you're doing this. You know, what's going to happen, because that can be an important thing in terms of being able to... And
also, I think the message is important. What are the tools? You know, where are we going to go with this conversation?
Which is why it's important to go to Al-Anon and get, you know, and ask somebody there for help with what to do. Because then you have a support group when you talk to your sister.
That's right.
Because it's the scariest thing to do, because you're scared. You know, you're going to say something to your sister, and she's never going to talk to you again, or she's going to, you know, it's terrifying. You know, I could relate in my own family. You know that. Not in my own immediate family, since my mother might kill me if she hears me say that. But you know, it's scary to want to tell somebody in your family you're sick, you have a problem, because you know they could just shut off and never talk. That's the fear we always have.
I haven't spoke to my younger brother in 2 years, so there you go.
By the way, this is Brian Scannell.
Yeah. And it's scary. Why haven't you spoken to your brother in a few years?
Well, he and I, well, it's the family dynamic, right? And you know, there's some things going on with him and my sister, and I don't approve. And you know, they had a little argument, you know. But these things happen. Like we had an argument on the phone, and I spoke to him probably not appropriately, and we haven't spoken since. And you know, but so that's a valid point, is that, you know, like the doctor said, you got to look at the timing, and then naturally it's always a fear of not and then losing that relationship. And I know when I got sober, my younger brother resented me for getting sober, for quitting drinking, you know, because we were drinking buddies, and he lost a friend. And so, you know, there's all kinds of dynamics in there, but Dr. Berger was right. That's the best time to, you know, you wait a day or so and you know, try to sit them down when they're not feeling so good in the head, but at the same time, they're not under the influence.
Well, we've lost Monica.
Well, I hope that helped her.
And Monica, if you want to call back and get any numbers for help, please do. And the number here is 877-830-830.
Fifth show.
I had a really rough time remembering that number for a few weeks.
Jesus.
I know, right?
I'm 0 for 1. Let's get to him in here.
So I'd like to do a few introductions real quick. Brian, you're a world-renowned actor, right?
I wouldn't say world-renowned, but
Well, certainly well-known.
they know me in Boston, anyways.
Oh, that's Boston. Boston's enough. That's a good place to be
In
known.
2 ways, they know him in Boston.
I'm not a worldly guy. I've been to Boston. I've been to L.A. But
So you were in The Town, a great movie,
yeah,
and
thank
Brotherhood, which was a series I absolutely loved.
you. Yeah,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
And
Which you could also, I was telling you, you could watch it on Netflix now. I'm like the biggest Instaplay guy on Netflix. It's like an addiction I have.
And you know what's sad? I don't have Netflix. I'm afraid to because when I want to watch a movie, I want to watch it right now. I don't want to order.
No. But they have Instaplay where you could watch it right now.
Oh, really?
Not every movie, but
live
there are
streaming now.
But there are a lot of
This is now a big ad for
for Netflix.
right.
But there are a lot of TV shows that are on.
If you're not addicted to drugs and you want to be addicted to video,
Get Netflix, and you can watch instantaneously on your TV. It's really cool.
The new process addiction. 5 movies a day. You're great.
I've gone from Facebook to Netflix. And,
Actually, when people get sober, a lot of them use movies. To
Judy is
fill
switching
the
seats in the
gap.
Titanic.
Yes, it's not a bad sit, but I'll take that switch. Nobody's like losing their home over Netflix. That would be.
No one ever died from Netflix.
No one ever died from Netflix or Facebook. Well, no, that's actually not true.
So
People have.
also in the studio tonight we have Alan Berger, who I've known, I guess, for a little over a year now.
Yes, you have.
And Alan is an author. You like to talk a little bit about your books and what you've been doing lately?
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that, share a little bit. 2008, my first book with Hazelden came out, and the title of it is 12 Stupid Things That Mess Up Recovery. And I wrote the book to try to give people a heads up on some of the pitfalls that they may encounter in that first 2-year period of time. One of the things we know is that the more you develop an awareness of how you may screw yourself up, how you may sabotage your recovery, the more likely you are to not to do that. It's that paradoxical intervention that you know a lot about, Andrew, in therapy, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so that was the basis of the book, is to try to give people some tools, create an awareness, promote an awareness of what might be going on for them.
So why the first 2 years?
Well, what we know now, that those 2 years are so critical in the process of recovery, right? The first year relapse rates are very stable, which is interesting. About 80% of people, 8 out of 10 people going into treatment or going into AA or NA, 8 out of 10 are going to relapse in that first year. Now, the interesting thing is once you get past that first year, the second year, everything flips around. 2 out of 10 are going to relapse that second year. So what we're really keying in on is what people are doing in that first year to get them into that second year. So that's why I was really focused on that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because we've been having a lot of discussions about, what it takes to get people sober, and what are generally the reasons. We've had so many people on already just in 5 shows, all of who have been sober, and the one thing that seems to keep coming through is that people get to the point where they feel like there's something they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Like that they're not willing to lose.
And I think that's true. See, what we see, there's 2 kinds of motivations. First motivation is what we call a pain motivation or a deficit motivation. Mm-hmm. This is hurting and I want to stop the pain. Let's just stop it. Now, that's can be a powerful motivation. The problem is it's not going to last too long, right? It's like the guy wants to patch the roof up and as long as it's raining, right? Once it stops raining, your worry about the roof leaking stops. The other kind of motivation, though, that if we could get people to tap into, and that's that growth motivation, to want to be the best person you can be, boy, that's really stable. But you're right. People typically start with the 1. Now, what we find is those people that are successful in recovery go from that pain motivation to being committed to finding a new way of life and getting really turned on to recovery.
That's so much about what I've been hoping to bring with the show, and the reason that we bring on people that are sober and that are successful is that we like to show that there's so much life after the beginning of recovery, and that's where life can really begin if you can just stick with it. There are these rewards that come.
Well, I've always said I believe most people that relapse or that go out, this is just my opinion, is that they quit. I hate to be cliche, they do quit before the miracle. They, it's like you know, the hardest thing for me this time when I got sober, I had been in 6 rehabs. And I remember this time when I had about 90 days sober, I was going to go drink. And I was like, I go to my mother, I had saved up like $88. And I go to my mother, I want my money, you know, because I didn't even trust myself with the $88. So she goes, I'll give you your money if you do me one favor, if you go to a meeting beforehand. And I said to her, okay, I'll go to. So she drives me to this meeting in Brooklyn, a clubhouse called Park Slope Caton, which was in Bensonhurst. And she goes to me, and I get to this meeting. I don't remember anything that happened that night, to be honest with you. But I woke up the next day. I mean, I remember seeing this guy, Tony Counter, and his nickname was that because he worked behind the counter. And, you know, and I remember he said to me, he just could see I was really messed, you know. And he goes, and whatever he did, he did. And I remember the next morning I woke up, I was still in pain, but I didn't drink. And it was the first time in my life that I had dealt with the feelings. You know, I used to believe my feelings could kill me. And I believe so many alcoholics and addicts believe their feelings could kill them. And they drink or they relapse because when they get that, they go out. And I believe most people go out with those feelings. And it's the ones that stay sober are the ones that made it through that day. When their skin was going to crawl off their body, when all they wanted to do was die, and they wake up the next day and they're like, wow, it didn't kill me. And it's
one of the weird things about, you know, a common story that I hear from especially alcoholics, but also now more people that are taking narcotics, especially pills, is that, you know, they had an experience where they were actually having sort of normal usage. They'd have a drink, and then all of a sudden they had like a problem in their lives, like their wife left them, or, you know, somebody died in their family, and they felt this extreme emotional pain, and they took a drink and it just went away. The pain just went away. And then that just started a progressive drinking pattern that just sent them off to the races. And they never dealt with that trauma or that pain, and they never found another way to deal with feelings anymore other than drinking. And drinking became the easy way to cope with pain.
Right, and it's like, but you know, when I got sober, there was a guy in New York that said, nobody's tombstones did they die of their feelings, you know, and I believe so many of us really just believe we could die of our feelings, and I know it's an irrational thought. It makes but when you're in that, when you believe that, it's as rational as it could be. It's as believable as it could be.
Brian, how did you get into this whole situation?
Well, I went to detox when I was 19. Like Judah, I was young, and I went to detox up in New Hampshire. And when I went to an AA meeting while I was in there, and a couple of meetings, they took us out, and then I get out and I went to a meeting, and I was scared. I was petrified of leaving the detox because I was in there for 4 weeks and I hadn't had a drink or a drug, and it was the big '80s, so you know it was booze and whatnot and blow, whatever, and you know, it was just a scared kid, and then I remember going to that meeting and thinking my life's over, but my life was actually just starting, you know, and yeah, actually, ironically, yesterday was my 23rd. Sober birthday. So
congratulations!
Sober 23 years yesterday. So,
and that would make you 44.
As my mother would say, "Don't clap for him. He's just doing what he's supposed to do." But
yeah, right.
you know, but I thought my life was over. I'm stuck in these. In Boston, we still meet in the basements of churches, and it's dingy and bad lighting and whatnot. But then I found some young people's meetings, and there was lots of kids that I was completely unaware that there was this whole subculture of clean and sober, young people, and it was great.
We see people getting sober younger and younger, which is actually encouraging. And the other thing is that we're seeing is people getting into recovery before they become sort of full blown in their addiction, which I find very encouraging as well. That you don't have to fully bottom up. There's this sort of myth out there that you have to, completely fall apart before you get sober, and I think we're starting to see that change. We're going to take a quick break right now. We'll be back in a few minutes with Brian and Alan.
And the number here is 877-8-830-830. That's 877-8-830-830.
We're KLEAN Radio.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Hey, welcome back to KLEAN Radio.
I like how I just did that with my finger and he like cued the music down. It's like very powerful.
You're definitely the control guy here.
I am.
Judah.
That was a strong point.
Yeah, it was like this.
This is very
Yeah, it was very strong.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
I like that. And the number here is 877-8-830-830, 877-8-830-830. You could also find us on Facebook at KLEAN Radio.
We're joined tonight by Brian Scannell and Alan Berger.
Hello.
Where are you from, Dr. Berger?
Well, I grew up in Chicago.
Ooh,
Windy
we got
City,
we got real places here. You in Boston, Chicago, New York. We're like, some real rivalries here.
Yeah,
we're rivalries.
The Bruins are in the hunt for the Stanley Cup right now.
Do you know Bobby Orr taught me how to skate?
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
no kidding.
Yeah,
Huh?
at Cornell University.
This is actually a great story.
Yeah, my parents, my dad's a biophysicist at Cornell, and so I used to go to Cornell's summer hockey camp, and Bobby Orr came by, and then a few other famous people.
Yeah, so your dad's a smart guy.
Yeah, he stuck me on the ice at a young age.
Bobby Orr.
Now tell them why you had to stop ice skating.
I had to stop because I developed an allergy to cold. Believe it or not, I'm not kidding.
I've
you.
never heard of this.
It's called cold urticaria.
Interesting. They even have a label for this. Look at that.
It sounds funny, but honestly, nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew what it was. It's actually life-threatening. You get an anaphylactic reaction to cold weather.
He gets hives if the water in the why am I repeating?
Yeah,
I know.
But how do you know this?
Because he was telling me his wife sprinkles water on him in the shower.
Nobody ever believes this, but what happened was I didn't even know I had this thing, and it was the summer, and I had really bad chickenpox, and I went swimming in a pool, and I got out, and it was windy, and the temperature change from the wind on wet skin is you have very little insulation once your skin's wet.
Yeah.
Right.
And the quick temperature change, my whole body broke out in hives, and I passed out and had an anaphylactic shock almost. And ended up, nobody knew what was going on. They thought maybe I hadn't eaten or something. And I ended up being actually in Cambridge University in England that summer, because my dad was always traveling around all these different universities. And some doctor goes, "Oh, you have cold urticaria." And I was like, "What's that?" Nobody really knew. But I have to take really high dosages of antihistamines.
You're like a mutant from X-Men.
Yeah. I know, right?
That's like does water seep from your body after you get out of the shower?
Yeah, well,
but look, isn't that relevant to what we're talking about? Because if you don't really identify what's going on with you,
right,
it can kill you.
Yeah.
And isn't that what we're talking about
exactly.
tonight? I mean, if you really don't get honest with yourself and take a look at what's going on, it can kill you.
And it was bad for me because it actually, I was 12 years old and I was like a great skater. Like hockey was really important to me, and I couldn't play that next season. That was it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think that's people's also. They're big. You're right. Because that's like your biggest fear when you're getting sober. It's like I always, somebody, Scott Redman, who I was extremely fond of, speaking wise, in one of the 12-step groups, always used to say, it's like, how you have problems. It's like, when you're first getting sober, if you're thinking about, can I have a date tonight? Yeah. This time when I got sober, it wasn't like, who I was going to take out tonight. It was like, what am I going to do to get better?
Yeah, like, is there life after, when I get clean and sober, what does life look like? And that's what you're saying. Yeah. It's like, you love this. You were so connected to skating. What was my life going to be like?
It's
that
terrifying.
Was going to leave a hole in it. And that's really like what you
said
that we're talking about.
The funny thing is, I remember, I always say, a lot of clients at my treatment center now are very wealthy, some of them, and they're very entitled, and they think that, they should get everything, and it's all about them. And I remember, some of my first thoughts, when I got this cold urticaria, were like, oh, no, my parents are going to have to build me a heated pool.
You're like Bubble Boy.
You're like, I got none of that.
Your dad's going to invent heated ice or something. Heated ice. Your dad's going to have heated ice.
I got none of that.
You had to stay where you had to deal with the cold.
I still got a hot shower. That's better than 90% of the world.
That's true.
But geographically, you have to live somewhere.
Well, my parents kept me there. Actually, we moved to Davis, California for a little while, and then I ended up going to graduate school at Tulane in New Orleans, which actually wasn't much better because it was really humid, and so the moisture, I had problems with that. So you know, I had to end up in the desert, you know. And so that's why LA's really.
So Florida's off. You can't go to Florida.
You know, it's funny, and actually, the worst place I've ever been was San Francisco.
I could understand that because of the weather
cold,
shift.
Misty, cold air. I couldn't breathe. I was like having asthma, kind of like my lungs would actually start to.
It's bizarre. When I came out here, I get cold out here. I get, it's the desert. I don't know.
I get cold out here too. I could walk around the back east without a jacket on in 5-degree weather, but out here,
it's different.
I'm cold.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And you can't drive.
And I don't like to admit it, right? And I don't like to admit it because it's like when you say you're cold and you're from back east, people are like, but you're from New York. I don't understand.
But look at the parallels that you're talking about in terms of what somebody has to do in their recovery about managing it. Look, you've got to manage this the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the same thing. And that's what we know today. Those people that are successful in recovery manage their illness one day at a time the rest of their life, just like you have to. The parallel's amazing to me, isn't it? I mean, when you really embrace this, that's what recovery is all about. Now, the difference is that psychologically you had some resistance to it because you have to give up some things, but so many addicts have a hard time identifying themselves because for them, it means something really negative.
Well, I think the hardest thing most alcoholics and most addicts ever have, I always say you have to recover from the life. Because if you don't recover from the life, there's a good chance you won't stay sober. And it's like we're both from, me and Brian are both from like certain areas where it's like, it's hard where, that your friends are everything. And it's like, who are you if you're not that?
Right.
Who are you if you're not the guy? It's like if, I have a friend that he has a hard time because he's the guy that always has to pay the bill. Right. He's that guy. He's the guy that has to go to the Four Seasons every night. And if he's not that, then who is he?
Right.
And it was,
sorry. Well, we had where I grew up, I'm from West Roxbury, which is a suburb within Boston proper, and we had generations and generations and generations of kids from my neighborhood, like literally generations. So where we were on the corner, our older brothers were in the schoolyard, and then the other older brothers were in the bar room, and it was just a generation. And every you were a hockey player or you played baseball, football, and your friends were everything. You went out with your friend, you hung in the corner with your friends till it was time to go home, and then when you graduated to the schoolyard, you were in the schoolyard till it was time to go home, and then the girlfriends were all part of it, and so that's your identity. And then next thing you know, myself, to speak for myself, I'm drinking and drugging, and I'm a mess, and I'm blacking out, and I'm now, my friends are kind of getting upset with me over stuff, but I'm trying to quit on my own, and that's not working, and then now I got to go away, and then it's, well, now all my friends are talking about me because I'm going away for 4 weeks. Like,
right.
Oh, Brian just disappeared. Like, what happened? Like, where'd he go? And where I grew up, there was no such thing as a teenage alcoholic or addict. It was just, so it's like, now I was terrified. I didn't see anything past that.
How scared were you? How scared were you when you came back?
I was saying, when I got out of detox, I was terrified.
I was in rehab in Israel, and I was living in Israel. I got sent to rehab, and I was in the middle, and I was in the middle of school, and I remember I had to go back to the rehab. I had to go back to school after rehab, and I remember going there, sitting there.
Just coming back from Israel and going back to school is difficult.
That's very true too. But I was sitting in this rehab. I was sitting in school in Israel, and I was thinking to myself, I don't belong here. Like, I called my drug counselor up from the rehab, and I said, "Can you come and get me? I need to stay there longer," because I didn't know. I was 18 years old. Who was I? And I was terrified.
Right.
I was just, because what do you do?
Especially at that young age, when your whole identity is your friends, and your whole identity is this thing that's culturally and through generations, like it's been passed down and it's.
So how did you break that cycle, Brian? Obviously you did.
It was interesting. I actually went into a halfway house in South Boston, which where I knew some kids from high school or whatever, and I played hockey with. But I pulled myself out of my neighborhood where I drank and hung around, and I moved into another neighborhood in Boston. and then I just began to go to meetings and get involved in that area, and I literally had to physically take myself out of where I was away from, because the corner I hung around was right across the street from my house, so I had to literally just pull myself out and go to another suburb. But it all wasn't as bad as it was, but I had to geographically take myself out of that, and then it was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. And then I just got a job working on the fish pier in South Boston and working on the piers, and I worked there in high school. So, and I met this whole new group of kids that didn't drink, but all great kids, a lot of them athletes, whatever, and then next thing you know, it just time kind of went on, and I
always find, like, people drinking a lot, and when they're at the height of their addiction, they just can't believe that everybody else isn't drinking and using.
Right.
It's like, you're like, like, oh, everybody's got to be using this many drugs and
well,
drinking.
my friends were taking bets on when I was going to drink again. Like, there was actually literally action they were taking on when's Scannell going to drink again.
You see, I think the discussion now is just so important, because see what happens with addiction, it actually weaves itself in to our identity. So that this is who we think we are. Like both of you are talking about it here right now, Judy, you and Brian, where you're talking about that you totally identified yourself as that person. And to think of changing that or losing that was like somebody ripping away your identity.
Yeah.
And see, and that's the great thing about that. I know you see this, Andrew, and I see this in recovery. You start to see these other parts of yourself that you didn't know existed before.
And it wasn't right away. It was,
it takes a while.
It's like
this
the first
process,
few years.
See, that's what you said. Don't give up before the miracle.
Right. The first few years
Right.
for people that stay sober, it's the reverse happens then. You know how drinking was your identity. The 12 steps become your identity until you learn how to just integrate it into your life.
Yeah.
Where it's no longer I'm Judah, it's
Right.
I'm sober. I'm just a sober member of society that's trying to.
Well, another difficult piece of it was when I went out, and I'm 19 years old, I'm in recovery, and there weren't a lot of people in my neighborhood anyways, but when I would still go out and see some of my old friends, and or if I went out and I was in a club and I still had a fake ID, and I would get into the clubs, and the girls would say, well, what are you drinking? And I'd say, well, I don't drink. And then, but there were some girls that would think that, wow, that's really cool. You don't drink it, like you're so young. But then there were other girls where, people, what do you mean you don't drink? How come that's weird? Like,
They were the ones
It's
that wanted to
devastating.
drink.
That happened to me. When I was in rehab. When I got back to school, I remember going to this bar and I wasn't drinking, and I had a crush on this girl. And I remember my drug counselor used to say to me, he used to go, "What do you think a girl would rather have after 11 o'clock at night? A drunken, not nice person?" He didn't say it like that, or a sober, nice guy. And I believed him, And I said, "Oh, it must be a sober, nice guy." And I finally work up the courage to say to this girl at this bar in Israel, "I have a crush on you." And she goes, "Judah, you're a really good guy, but
You don't party.
You don't party."
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, ugh. Like everything that this guy had told me in that instant was a lie.
Right.
And I didn't believe I could, it's...
Well, that's too bad, because often it's like people come to me and they say, I don't want to drink, but I want to go to this party, and there's so many practical, simple skills you can teach somebody, like show up with a beverage already in your hand. If you walk in with a soda in your hand, nobody's going to ask you to, what you want to drink. You're like, oh, I already got my drink, It's just things like that, and there's things that you can learn so that you don't get in these situations where you're triggered or peer pressure.
Feeling the pressure that you've got to do what everybody else is doing.
It didn't help that she was a waitress at the bar.
I used to
Huge
carry
problem.
a little cooler in my car filled with I was drinking Mountain Dew. And that's what I always had, a 6-pack of Mountain Dew in my cooler when I went out at night in the car, just in case, where if I was going to a party, and then I always had one in my hands.
Yep.
And
it just took that away.
It just
takes
took it all
takes that
away.
element out.
Exactly. It was a great. That's a great point.
One of the things I've been working with people, I've developed this dialogue that people go through, and it's very interesting to watch them go through this at different stages of the recovery. So what I have them do is identify their addicted self, their alcoholic self, their addicted self. And, they can be that person and talk from that position inside of them very well.
Right.
If they're just starting recovery, I'll have them be their healthy self, or they're part of them that wants to get well, right? The recovery self. And then I'll put them to have 2 chairs, right, where they're facing each other. And I'll have them go back and forth between this. So what do you think happens early on? Well, the recovery self says to the addict, "Get out of here. I want you out of my life. Quit destroying my life. You're ruining my life. You know, you made my wife go away, or you made me lose this job, or whatever it is. And that's almost 99% of the time. The first strategy to deal with addiction is to do what? Try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But does that work? Of course not, right? We got to embrace that.
Perfect. I always say that to people. It's like you got to learn how to embrace your quirks.
You do. And you got to learn how to embrace your addiction.
Yeah.
And that's what you did with dealing with your allergic
urticaria.
Yeah, I can't even pronounce
We'll
it.
probably get more calls on
that. I think I have that.
And the number here is 877-8-830-830. That's 877-8-830-830. We could talk about cold urticaria. Is that
cold urticaria?
Cold urticaria. Okay. We could talk about your mutant thing that you have going on there.
My mutant thing.
And your 12-step support group that you're actually going to start up for it.
One of the things that I actually like what Alan was talking about is concepts of narrative, and not to get too highfalutin here, but the idea that you can actually create a narrative for yourself and that you can live it out, and that all of us are always, and to some level, and there's a whole realm of therapy that just deals with narrative therapy, which is very analytically based, more than sort of cognitive and behaviorally based, like a lot of the newer therapies. But I like the idea that that all of us sort of have a story running in our head about who and what we are, and what we're going to do, and people need to sort of know that they can shape that, they can change that narrative. And there's normally critical points in people's lives where there's like key moments they can point to where they can say, oh, my chapter changed here, and then it went to another chapter. We'll be speaking some more about this and other topics.
Have comedian.
Yeah, we have a great comedian, David Forseth, coming in. Got him.
You're horrible with words.
Right. And please give us some calls. It's 877-8-830-830. Clean Radio.
Addiction is any behavior you cannot stop that results in destructive consequences. Are you struggling with an addiction to drugs or alcohol? Are you ready to take control of your life? The treatment advisors at KLEAN Treatment Center are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. The sooner you reach out for help, the sooner your new life begins.
I just love that song. It's for the block boy. Yeah. Welcome back to Clean Radio. You're here with, we have a great in-studio guest with us tonight, but I just wanted to tell the story. And why the importance of the show to me and the importance of our guests is last week I got invited out, and I was with Tony Dennison, and I got invited out to this great party called the Night of 100 Stars. And we were sitting at this table, and this actress was sitting next to me, and she started sharing that, that she's in a different program, that she's in Al-Anon. And we were talking quiet, and I had said accidentally out loud, oh, how long, or whatever. I got really excited. And she's like, shh, shh, and like Tony overhears this, and he goes, how long do you have? And then she's like, shh, 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 for anonymity purposes, and I realized it's for a second I had this like really fun moment of like, sitting next to somebody where I could identify with them, and I was like, and a lot of us like that, it's like, so we have a stand-up comic in tonight, that's sober. We have an actor in here that's sober, and it's one of those things. It's cool. Like a lot of us are like, oh, he's in the program, and it really is a very important thing, and I break my anonymity. I have no problem with breaking my anonymity. I don't break other people's anonymity. But if you're willing,
except for just a few seconds ago.
Well, I didn't.
Breaking mine just then.
I did break. Right. I broke everybody in here's anonymity.
I broke mine. I already had a friend text me on his way in the car. He said, "Happy 23 years."
But it's so important. It's funny as we're seeing, like, with certain celebrities in the news on the other side. It is such a powerful message. It's like when you're sitting at home going, oh, he's sober, and it really is a cool thing. So with that, we welcome a sober comic. And I mean, it's sort of fun going to, as a fan of you, I will be a fan of you now. I know Andrew's a fan of you. And to say, hey, he's in the program. I'm going to go hear this guy perform, and it is a camaraderie thing.
Well, we have David Forseth tonight.
After my whole long, boring story.
David, actually, every O'Brien's in Venice, right?
Santa Monica, yeah. Every
Santa
Sunday,
Monica?
Yeah, we're there, yeah. Every Sunday
Where is
night.
the line between Venice and Santa Monica?
Right where O'Brien's is actually.
Right. You have a great comedy show there.
Yeah, every Sunday.
I always have fun. My wife plays there often.
Amy Dresner, yeah, great comedian. Yeah, she's always there.
And tomorrow night, you're at the University of Irvine.
That's correct, yeah, at the Ant Hill Pub. I'll be there telling some jokes.
That's
so,
exciting.
Also a free show. If you guys want to change your lives, come on down.
Yeah.
Live it like you love it, you know?
I love comedy.
Well, that's the hardest thing, though, is like when you're sober, you know, and you go to the comedy clubs, you know, you always have to order 2 drinks.
Yeah, well, you get used to a lot of Diet Coke.
A lot of Diet Coke, right.
And, if you want to get edgy, put some lemon in there, you know, and get zesty. It's crazy talk.
And the Red Bulls are always a little more.
Yeah. Well, you know, comedy, actually, I never drank before I went up. You know, I think that, you know, there's always been a thing about having just, it's kind of a spiritual quest when you're an artist. I think you want to have the clarity there. But going to parties is certainly different, you know, because people don't trust you. Women do not trust a guy who doesn't drink. You know, because you're that guy. You know what I mean?
What's the reason? What's the reason?
You're gonna be in a hot tub with
You can't tie knots if you're drunk.
Yeah, I was at a birthday party and this girl walked up and I was just down by myself. You know, like you guys said, you know, having a beverage, like you walk in with a Diet Coke or something, and I was just down there by myself as we're cutting the birthday cake, and she goes, "Diet Coke, you're that guy." Right? And I was like, "That guy? What? The guy's not gonna have none of these and have sex in the bathroom? No, I'm not. Chicken tits. Put some clothes on, you know." But you know,
can you say that on the radio?
Yeah. But it's they view you as like a different. But I mean, it's like I think it is a camaraderie because when people are sober or you know, it's a different walk. It's having absolute clarity and accountability all the time. It is a different walk with a different purpose, you know? Like, there's no excuse. You can't be like, "Oh, sorry last night, guys. I was a little banged up, you know, pardon me." You know, no, it's just, no, that was me at the age of 38 giving wet willies and snapping bras. That's all me, guys. So I don't need to get drunk to be an ass. That's just me. God bless. You know, that's it's different.
Yeah.
That is true. That's just like one of the hardest things about, you know, when I got sober and when you're sober in your 20s, when everybody else is making mistakes under the guise of drinking, you're like, no, that's just who I am.
Yeah. All me. You're welcome.
David made me think of something. My sponsor back in Boston, my first sponsor, he had a sober nightclub in Boston, and we had we started a comedy night. And we had like Teddy Bergeron came in. I don't know if you even know who that is, but he was on like Johnny Carson. I mean, he was. I mean, Lenny Clark came through. I mean, they all the next thing. Jay Moore came through. The other guy who's the big HBO guy now, he had his own show there. Dane Cook came through. I mean, really, like it was unbelievable. Like how the crowd that used to come in there, and it was all sober people, all people in recovery. It was great. And then, you know, certain nights it was a nightclub or whatever, but the comedy night was a big night there.
It seems that actors or comedians, there's 2 kinds: those that drink and those that are in rehab. You know what I mean?
and don't forget the musicians are in there.
With some musicians sprinkled in.
Yeah, they're all in a whole separate ward of the rehab.
Well, that's one thing that Charlie Sheen said that I thought was kind of fair, where he said, if I was a musician, nobody would be giving a damn right now about what's going on.
Oh, it's encouraged,
But the problem is you're on a family show.
Right.
You're on a show with a teenager on it.
Yeah. But how sad is that also, though, that, you know, we think musicians, well, that's part of the deal.
Well, there are bands that have a sober bus and
sober
a get
companion
high bus, a party bus.
For the separate group members.
No, for the different group members, because we were just discussing this, Alan and I, on the way, the doc here on the way here. We were just talking about that, how they have a lot of bands have 2 separate buses, which is, you know.
Well, drinking for everybody. I mean, it's like I grew up in Montana, and it's an inherent part of our culture, like the redneck part of our culture. I mean, I recall very vividly the first time I had a Budweiser, or I'm going to say, but the first time I had a cold beer with my dad and my brother. You know, they gave me a sip when we're hunting. It was just this epiphany, like this huge tantamount moment in my life. You know, we're like, I'm a man. I can shoot a deer, drink some beer. You know what I mean? And you don't have, you know, like we're taught, you have fun, you drink. That's it. You know. And I mean, just, you know, being.
And
sober.
why did you leave Montana?
They threw me out.
And now it's like you just shoot a deer. You don't have a beer.
They threw me out because I was actually sober, and I shot a deer and started crying. They're like, "You got to go to California. You
got to go with them sits.
Get out of here, tater tot. Yeah, sit in traffic." But,
did you stop drinking here in Montana?
Oh, here, I've been here a while, but, you know, one of the things that actually really resonated with me, I was home for Christmas, and I have, alcoholics in my family, as everyone does, but my mom said to me, she said, "David, you know, just because, you know, you handle it better, per se, than most people, doesn't make it okay." She goes, "If you abuse alcohol, you abuse alcohol." And she said, "David, I've seen you abuse alcohol, and you do it a lot, and it really bothers me." And she said it as a friend, not as a mother.
With judgment.
Yeah, and she said it as a friend, as my equal, really, and it really resonated with me in a paramount way. And, I thought about that night. I was like, we all choose our own bottom, right? And that was one of the things that really just made me sit and think about what I was doing and where I was going and how you process things, because it is an accountability thing. And if you have a bad set or you blow an audition, I could make the choice of going and getting wasted, but that doesn't really, you don't learn anything from that, and it's to embrace and one thing I guess I learned too, it's good to fail. You learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. When I bomb on stage, I learn way more and just proliferate far more than I would if I go uncrushed. Because when you bomb, you've got to sit back and really take it in and go, okay, what went wrong and how do I process, how do I get better, and how do I do this differently?
Actually, I think watching you bomb is the funniest sets ever. When I go there and nobody else is laughing, I find you funnier.
That's good. Well, you should come along more often then.
Yeah, because it's normally when you're just completely out of control. By the way, if nobody's ever seen David, you got to go check him out. He's just really one of the funniest guys I've ever seen, and his energy level is just unreal, especially for somebody that's sober, because you wouldn't think so when you're watching.
Yeah, people think I'm on drugs a lot.
Like James Franco.
Yeah, James
Actually,
Franco.
Yeah. That was a point I was going to hit on earlier, which is, there have been times when people, when we were talking about like cultural stuff, and people have referred to me as the drunkest guy at the wedding.
Right.
But I wasn't. I didn't have a drop of alcohol. I didn't have anything to drink.
I always say the loudest table right at the restaurant is the sober table.
Yeah,
right?
because I was having such a great time. People associated great time with being hammered or being loaded, however you want to put it. And it's just funny how it doesn't. It took me a while to figure that out, but I realized young that that isn't something that I needed.
Well, it's every beer commercial in America, does teach you that.
Yeah.
Well, after the first 1 to 2 drinks, the positive benefits of alcohol actually kind of dissipate in terms of how they affect your brain. So everything after that is kind of downhill. So, and I find, being sober, and then I sit at a table with people that are drinking, like the first couple drinks, I'm kind of like, ooh, that looks good. And then after I watch them take a couple drinks, then I'm like, thank God I didn't take a drink.
That,
right?
yeah.
And then you actually have this incredible amount of control and power actually within the group, because everybody else is kind of impaired and they're saying things they shouldn't. And
you're not. You're like this. You're like note to self.
What I used to do,
Blackmail.
though, is I'd surround myself with people that were way worse than I was. I wasn't doing drugs, but he's snorting bull like Noriega and popping ecstasy and licking people's faces, and I'm like, I don't have a problem. Look at him. I'm fine. Let's do a shot. You know what I mean?
So like drinking. It's like drinking on Skid Row.
Yeah, I was like, I'm fine. Look at that guy. He's homeless.
Right, you just pick up a homeless guy.
Yeah, exactly. Drive around and he pees on me. I'm doing all right. Looking good. Yeah,
that's great. Wow.
But I mean, everything's good. I mean, relationships are better. You make better decisions. You have more clarity. Like, I'm dating a Vietnamese girl now, and when I say something stupid, and she's like, "Oh, kill Whitey," you know what I mean? I don't take her seriously. I take her literally. I'm like, I better get out of the room. But no, you don't take things very personally and overreact and say stupid stuff. I mean, it's just much better. My relationships are richer. My work is better. I'm writing better. My presence on stage is better. It's, I just feel that it's a better. And also, I mean, I saved like $500,000 last month. It's not a bad book, guys,
So we're going to take a break in a second, but when I come back, I want to talk about how you actually didn't get sober in AA, but got sober in a different way, and talk about how that can be different for each person. So anyways, KLEAN Radio, call us, 877-830-830.
Is your drinking getting worse? Are you taking more pills than prescribed? Do you want to quit, but quitting on your own isn't working? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040. Our 24-hour staff is here to help you. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. Addiction is progressive. The sooner you reach out for help, the better the chances are for recovery. Call KLEAN Treatment Center today at 888-601-6040.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio.
So I have to ask you a question quickly. Are you actually a Joy Division fan, or are you just like, it's one of those cool bands like like the Pixies to like have a T-shirt of?
Wow.
That nobody actually knows their music, but
I'm actually a huge Joy Division fan. Yeah, which is kind of sad because it's probably one of the most depressing bands on earth. So
I don't know any Joy Division
unlike
songs
my
other
wife,
than Shadow Play.
My
maybe.
wife has like every classic rock T-shirt ever, and she pays like ridiculous amounts of money for them, right? Like the original 1970s Fleetwood Mac shirt or whatever. But she's got all these like rock shirts that are have bands on them. She doesn't know a single song from the band. Like she has this Frank Zappa T-shirt that she wears all the time, and I'm like, Amy, name one Frank Zappa song. She's like, shh, don't tell anybody. I don't know.
The only thing I know of Frank Zappa is that he has a son named Dweezil.
Well, there you go.
And right, isn't there like a Moon Unit?
Moon Unit's his
Yeah,
daughter,
that's the only reason I know certain
about
people.
Montana. I'm going to be a dental floss tycoon, right? Move to Montana soon. That's a Frank Zappa song, isn't it?
You see, you're asking.
I have no idea.
I got the Joy Division shirt on. I can ask me a question about Joy Division.
They have a song called Shadow Play. I know that because the Killers covered a song of theirs called Shadow Play.
Well, there's a lot of bands that owe a lot to Joy Division.
I have a question about Joy Division. Who is
Yes.
Joy Division? How about that?
Well, they became New Order after their lead singer killed himself.
And who is New Order?
I actually liked Joy Division. So
there we go. Thank you,
go.
Brian. I appreciate the
They
support.
were great. I remember dancing to them in a club in Daytona a long time ago.
Do you actually go dancing?
Oh, yeah.
Are you a fan?
I love going out, yeah.
So you're one of those guys. I'm always curious to meet the guy that likes to go dancing.
Are you kidding me? I've gone. I go out. I have a lot of friends in Miami, so we'll go to Miami, go to dinner at like 10, 11 o'clock, get dinner, and then hit the club at 1, and then you're out all night, and then.
So here's my question
Go
to
to
you.
the beach.
You could be honest. You don't have to be honest. Do you go dancing to meet women, or do you go dancing because you actually enjoy the dancing?
Nah, I just go. If friends are going, I go, and then if I meet somebody, I meet somebody. If I don't, I don't. That's why I like a lot of these big clubs. Actually, that was the first time. Now that we're talking about Joy Division, the first time I danced on a dance floor, I was like 21 years old, and I was by myself.
Huh.
But it was that kind of music where.
Right. Well, they have songs like Isolation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, but it was just everybody was out on the dance floor
Right.
just dancing. This is just before raves started, and you didn't need a girl to dance. You just danced, And,
I actually spent some time in Tokyo. I worked with a record company out in Tokyo and one of my other careers. And in Tokyo, everybody actually lines up and faces the DJ, and they dance side by side, which is... I can't figure that one out.
I sort of like that. I feel a lot more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So line dancing.
Yeah, line dancing that you don't have to like.
But it's like really intense line dancing, and it's all
With glow
it's free
sticks.
form
With
in
glow
line.
sticks,
It's a techno Garth Brooks. That sounds nice.
I actually, when I was getting sober, I actually ran out of a club in New York. I had about like 90 minutes sober, and my friend brings me to this club, and I was like looking around, and I was in New York, and it was one of these hot places, and I was like, I can't. Nobody could see me making the face I'm making, but I literally ran because I was scared to death. I was like, I can't be here.
Yeah.
Isn't that a good thing? Like getting sober and you go back in those environments, you're like, you know what? I didn't miss people sweating on me and peeing on my shoes. I didn't miss that.
Well, yeah, no.
Or
slobbering,
peeing on your own shoes or in your own closet.
But what's important what Brian is sharing is that it's finding these things that you enjoy doing and being able to do them sober is it's a bigger high.
Right.
It's like when you go dancing and if you go clubbing, and I'm not a clubber, I'm a lounger, but when you can do these things and you can do them sober,
Or a vegetarian.
right? There is no
Not
greater.
hysterical. That's not
Right. It's for the Montana man down here.
It's like going to a
He's gonna
ball
have a
game.
second.
It's like going to a ball game sober. There's no greater feeling. I used to steal beer from my friends. I'd like take it from under their chairs and pour it into my cup because I hated to be finished first. You know that, and I didn't have money. And but there was no greater feeling than getting sober and doing these things and realizing, oh my God, it's like those people that would see Natural Born Killers and go, you had to be on acid to get it. And I was like, no, it's just a horrible movie, But I didn't have to be on acid to see Natural Born Killers.
Right.
Everything that's good you could do sober.
Right.
It's like I used to hear comedians say, a lot of comedians go, oh, the joke's too smart for them. And then somebody one time said, no, it's just not that funny.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, and also I think that things are more profound. They're far more powerful when you're sober because they mean more, and you're there. You're just more present. I mean, you're going to carry it with you more. You're more present in the moment. The moment stays with you much longer, and it means more. So,
and you feel things.
So when you want to when you make out with the girls because you want to make out with her, it's not because you're making a bad decision.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean,
right.
that's a kind of a trivial
No,
example,
it's actually very good.
But you know, it's really, I mean, it's you make better decisions. There's more clarity, and just for myself, like being on stage when you have those great sets, and now as opposed to going up with nerves of like, oh, I'm a failure, you don't have any talent, you shouldn't be doing this, you should have gone to college, listen to your parents. Now you're nervous, you're like, let's get it on. You know, it's a much better nerves. You're like, you know, it's like, come on, you know, it feels good, man. So
I went back. I started playing ice hockey again. What was it, 8 years ago? I ran into a friend who was playing pro in Manhattan Beach, and he had a bunch of old New York Rangers stuff in his garage, and then we went out and got skates, and I started playing again. I had lost a hockey scholarship drinking, and drank it away, and then I went back to school, and then to get back to go back into the club and thing, I was doing an internship when I was in university in Argentina. And there was this one club, Buenos Aires News in Buenos Aires, it was an outside nightclub. And I remember walking in this club, and culturally there, if you don't drink, it's a little different, because it's like, what do you mean you don't drink? Because there's not a lot of like, you know, whatever. But there was like 3,000 kids in this club all singing the same song. It was bizarre to me, but it was outside. There were like 3,000 kids, and it was absolutely one of the best nights of my life. And I remember every minute of it. You know, I wasn't, you know, blacked out, or like you said, peeing on someone's shoe, or, you know,
peeing on my own shoe.
So David, you know, when we left for the break, we were talking about how actually you got sober on your own. Yeah, is that how it happened?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's you know, there were certain people or influences in my life, and you know, I just wasn't happy. I wasn't, you know, and it just had lost its zest. Like the feeling of being buzzed anymore was like this redundant. It was almost like going to a job I didn't like anymore, you know. And I raised as a Christian, and I'm not the most steadfast Christian, but I pray every day. I just want to do more with my life. I want to have more meaning, and I want to be a better example and have a more meaningful walk. And I know that, you know, wasting one's time, you know, under the influence, and it's just I'm kind of finished with that. I am finished with that. I want to do more with my life and more with my time here.
Yeah, I think some people mature out. You know, I think that's a concept. I don't know. What do you think about that, Alan? Like,
well, you know, I like what you're saying, but you see, I mean, we know people get well that, you know, other than going to Alcoholics Anonymous. But it's interesting that when you see what happens, the experience people have, it's very similar, isn't it?
Correct.
First thing is you realize you had a problem. I mean,
I went through a breakup, and it actually
very painful situation, right?
We were living together, and it was the first one I'd ever lived with. And as an actor or comic, you know, what's your backup plan? You know what I mean? You know, that's enough. And then finally I lived with the girl, but I remember we broke up.
Turned to one instead of she.
I didn't drink.
It was like the first one.
I went to a gig, and they paid us in form. It was in San Diego, and they paid us in form of a bar tab. They're like, oh, drink whatever you want. And I remember I sat there looking at the bar, and I could taste the Corona or the beer. I could taste the tequila. I know what kind of reposado and I went through that whole process, and I knew that like by drink 3 or 4, it was going to be a downhill zone for me. And then I'd probably make a phone call. Long story short, I drove back to LA, and the next morning I didn't sleep. I had insomnia through this, and I looked at the ceiling, and I yelled at the ceiling. I go, I can't even sleep, God! I screamed.
Yeah.
And a voice as clear as a bell hit me in the gut, and it said, David, you've been asleep for the last 10 years.
Yeah, right.
I actually took my breath out. I sat on the bed.
That's powerful.
And so a month after I quit drinking, I remember I was like, hey, Lord, hello, where's the Miracle Bird dog? You know what I mean? Years later, still waiting, buddy, but it feels good.
See, we call that a moment of clarity.
Right. It was.
Right at that moment, you could see what was going on in your life and what was taking place, and almost everybody that gets on a path has a moment. Now, it was interesting. We were talking about Charlie Sheen earlier. I heard you and Judah rapping about that.
Yep.
When you listen to Charlie Sheen, he's stuck in what we call a sincere delusion.
Yep.
And it's an interesting term, isn't it? Because he so believes what he is saying. I mean, he's so convicted that this is the truth, right? I mean, we see that conviction.
He's trying to bargain within his denial.
I heard you say it. Yeah. That's a great term. And you know, Vern Johnson, who is one of the founders in the field of this chemical dependency stuff, coined the term sincere delusion. I love it because you could just see that manifested.
Well, it seems that people will actually, you know, it's your own reality, right? Where he's created this reality for himself. Where it seems to me like he's on his fingernails in the cliff, just like
exactly what he looks like.
I'm fine.
That's exactly what he looks like. And see, you had that moment of clarity where you just said, "Hey, you know, look at what's really going on. Let me get honest with myself." And everybody that starts the path has that moment where they get honest with themselves. where they really see themselves as they are, not as they'd like to see themselves, not as they'd like to believe themselves to be, but as you truly are at that moment.
Right.
See, it's also very freeing too. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's very freeing because then, like I said, there's to err is human, and God disciplines those that He loves, and you learn by trial and error. So to let go of that and to accept that, I guess, at the moment of clarity, but to accept being human and be, it's okay. It's good to make a mistake and to own up to that and embrace it. It's a huge, like, this burden off my shoulders was enormous,
But see, addiction tells us that's what right is wrong and what's wrong is right. See, that's the message that addiction gives us. What's right is wrong and what's wrong is right. That's how, because we know it hijacks the brain.
Well,
see, that's the interesting
well, let me
thing.
ask you a question then, and I'm just relating this to myself. I always knew that I always used to say to people, I was raised in an Orthodox home. I wore a yarmulke until I was 17, so I had never eaten shrimp, lobster, anything like that. And after I left my faith a little bit, as you say, I still never did those certain things.
Right.
And I always somehow in myself believed that I was going to be okay if I just held on to something, something of my youth, something of my childhood, that I never got so far down the scale that I couldn't be.
That
couldn't be saved.
That you weren't that.
And I know that it was just in a crazy irrational fear, but I was living in a halfway house in Mesa, Arizona, run by the Hells Angels, and I don't mean a sober living. I mean a halfway house, with criminals and me.
From Israel to Mesa.
I know.
From Israel, right. That's my memoirs. Those are my memoirs.
An international alcohol.
And I remember I'll never forget, I was sitting in this halfway house, and I meet this woman she was dating one of the criminals, and she goes, and it was really funny, I was sitting with them all night, and they were all complaining about taxes, and I realized this wasn't a good time to be smart, and I didn't realize it, and I said it, and I go, well, at least you know where your tax dollars went, and, paying for them to go to jail, and this woman goes to me, she goes, your name's Judah? She goes, I don't like your name. And I should have stopped, and I go, why not? She goes, well, you betrayed my Lord and Master. And I was like, I've had a few blackouts in my day, but I don't remember killing Christ. And but so I was in this.
Judas,
so you got confused with Judas, and but I remember just sitting there. My mother had gotten me this Star of David, and I remember thinking, as long as I just hold on to this,
that's interesting.
I am not fully gone, and because I always knew it's like that song by Eric Clapton. I remember I used to listen to Tears in Heaven and think to myself, if I died, would my grandfather just recognize me? So I wasn't that guy. I didn't want to. I knew I was going down, but I didn't want to lose. I just knew there was something there.
Well, see, that's where this idea about the brain being hijacked is really interesting, because there's a part of us that has a sense that something's wrong, right? But we can't seem to stop the train.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here, is there's no brakes on it anymore. At some point in time, we cross that line and we can't find the brakes. And that's really the addiction part of it. See, so we lose our autonomy. We lose that ability to make choices that you were talking about before. I loved what you said. God, now while I'm clean and sober, I can make some choices about what I want to do with my life. Before that, we don't have that autonomy in our life. And we don't realize we don't have it. See, that's the
and that's terrifying.
Thing,
that's
man.
the terrifying
There's a
thing.
reoccurring theme that we've been talking about. One is that spirituality is a big issue in addiction, and it comes with a lot of baggage because there's been such a moral stigma to drinking for such a long time, and I think that's affected how people view religion and spirituality within the issue of addiction. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think to some extent there is still a level of personal responsibility where a person has to decide, you know what, I'm not going to drink and I'm not going to use drugs no matter what. And they have to have some sort of core within themselves still. So how do you approach
NA
that?
says it. This is the way that Narcotics Anonymous says it. I am not responsible for having my disease, right? My disease is not my fault, but I am 100% responsible for my recovery. And I love that. See, that's the line that I draw in this thing. Yeah, we have this thing we know now today. There's a big genetic influence. There's all kinds of cultural influences. We talked about it. This society is a drinking-oriented culture. Let's face it. So
yeah, it's funny because alcohol is such a horrible drug in some ways, right?
I know. Think about it.
It makes people throw up all the time.
All kinds of
right?
stuff.
Right?
Every night. What do you mean? So much?
Domestic violence, incest in
go to
family.
an ER on a Saturday night and the smell of alcohol.
Yeah, I know. Incest line.
You hear people like,
come on. I mean, it's across the board. But yet, this whole culture's oriented to it. Like you said, turn on the TV. In 2 hours, how many ads are you going to see for alcohol?
Well, I was sharing this a few weeks ago when I was a kid. There was this paper around for a while called The National. It was like this all-sports paper. And on the back page for Christmas time, it used to say, Ingle-L's, Christmas just ain't the same without J and B. Right. And I remember seeing this ad going, oh, my God, that's the greatest, And, like, I thought it was just the greatest ad. And I show it to my dad, who was, who worked in that business. And he goes, yeah, it's a cute ad, but for me it was like, oh my God, this like revolutionary ad for J and B.
That's how we sounded when we drank and started singing.
But I remember I saw Ironweed as a kid. Most people that movie would be really disturbing to. I was like, I could see that happening to me, And I don't know if you've seen Ironweed, but it's not a very uplifting movie. And like leaving Las Vegas, I would watch it going, yeah, you drink it, Nicolas Cage, And I remember like wanting to do that, wanting to walk around
getting
Winn
back
Dixies.
Getting back to like the real issue there. I mean, this issue of spiritual higher power, being able to do something versus individual responsibility and self. Because I always hear so many messages when people speak. Like David said, that for him, his mother made a statement that he took very personally, and he made a decision about that he felt, but then he also had this very sort of spiritual sort of experience at the same time.
But Carl Jung was huge with that.
Well, really, David just went through. I mean, really, the basis. My life is devoted to love and service. And to be a better person in my life and to be accountable. And so I'm an old school sober guy where I look at, one, it's none of my business how I became an alcoholic or an addict. It's just my business to do something about it, to your point. So, and with David, it's like, for me, it's like if somebody's doing the right thing and taking accountability and they're filling that spiritual hole and they're good people and they're trying to be better people, to me, it doesn't matter how they're doing it. It's great that they're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's there's different ways in each program, but I think, like you said, for me, it's all spiritually based. I was trying to fill a big empty hole in me with whatever I could get my hands on, and it's all different addictions. It could be food, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex. It doesn't, whatever it is, it's going to fill that hole. And then that one day when we have that moment of clarity and we say, all right, enough's enough, and I got to get help. I got a problem, and then but at the basis of it for me was a spiritual malady, and I had to find some power, as long as I wasn't it, greater than myself to pray. I pray every morning as well and every night.
Well, you're saying with spirituality with alcohol, I guess in particular, is that it is associated because if you have a few drinks, you said after 2 or 3, you make bad decisions. I was home a couple of years ago for Christmas Eve, and you see things like you're like, nah, I don't miss that. My uncle's like, I'm a good drunk. It's like, you just tried to French kiss my mom last night, ass nuts. And he did. It's like, you're not a good drunk. You're a moron. He tried to French kiss my mother in front of his brother. I'm just like, dude, is that me in 40 years? I'm done. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, that is, it's Montana,
bad decision making. Yeah, it's
in Montana.
Yeah. Probably raise him in Montana.
But it is so that therefore that it is a spiritual, it is a personal thing with accountability. And as far as going to parties
but is there a difference between moral development and religious
development?
I
think people misunderstand that that's what you're talking about. There is a difference between religion and spirituality. There is a difference between
it's just moral development.
I think we live in a place though.
On that?
For example,
in the big book they call it moral psychology.
Right. So there are human secular movements, humanist movements, right, that believe that there's innate sort of beliefs and sort of central tenets about being a human being that are universal truths. Right? And that they don't have to be attached to a religion. So you can be a very moral person and be an atheist.
Right.
Maybe more moral than a lot of religious people.
Right. Accountable behavior.
Exactly. No, you're making a great point.
I would agree.
That's a powerful point that you're making.
Right.
The way I say it, in a lot of my writings, I talk about that it's what's right about us that we ignore that gets us sick. It's not what's wrong about it, but it's what's right about us. That's what Jung was talking about as well. It's what's right about us that we ignore that gets us really in trouble.
You know, my father, I had a really hard time when I got sober, you know, with the whole religious thing because, you know, my father's an observant Jew, and who I love dearly, and I'm not one of, it drives me crazy when people say this, that religion is for people that are scared of hell, spirituality is for people that have been there, and I'm always like, that's very spiritual of you to say, you know. But I remember my father saying something to me to the extent, something's only really wrong if it's wrong to you, and when it becomes wrong to you, that's when you have to stop doing it. You know, and I didn't, it took me a long time to really understand that because, you know, when you're raised with religion or you're raised, everything's wrong to you. You know, the first time I ate, you know, I ate non-kosher, I literally thought the heavens were going to come down and strike me down with furious anger, you know. And I went to my mom and I told her, and like, I was really scared.
I hope you started with bacon.
No, I didn't know. It wasn't even, it was like borderline not kosher. It was like a baked potato at like a non-kosher restaurant. And, but, you know, and as the more I've gotten sober, the more that rule that my father taught me about, you know, or said to me has become really the truth for me. It's like, you know, people always, you know, my political orientation is I'm a conservative, right? You know, and it's people always say, how can you be a Jewish conservative, you know? And I'm like, because I have no guilt, you know, and, you know, and it's one of those things I've become okay with who I am because I've always been willing to look at those things that I if it's wrong to me, if it's not wrong to
There's
me.
a Native American parable, Montana, but the Native Americans they have a belief that there's the two wolves within all of us, and that which the wolf that grows stronger is that which you feed the most. There's a good wolf and a bad wolf, and that, you know, by doing substances, or I think it's a number of things. You said, well, you know, when you're drunk, the true you shows up. Well, is that because you're unhappy in your marriage, your career is going poorly, you're pissed at your dad, or whatever it is? But it's not an excuse. Well, I was drunk. Get in touch with that. What's bothering you? What's the source of your frustration, your angst? You know, and embrace that and overcome it, or at least become friends with it. Feed the good wolf. If you're in a situation, you're listening to angry music all the time, you're hanging out with people that are going to jail and getting fights a lot, you're going to be on that same path. You need to put yourself in better situations. You know what I mean? Feed the good wolf more, and I think you're going to find yourself in better, more harmonious situations. Right?
Well, it's like, you know, stick with the winners, you know, and I think that's a huge, you know, it's like funny because there is a difference between judging and evaluating. And, you know, we're always like, don't judge, you know, don't judge. But you can evaluate. And I could look at a situation and assess a situation and say, I don't want to hang out with him. And I remember I was 10 months sober. And when you're newly sober, you'll hang out with anybody. You're not really like listening, or like you'll just be like, oh, they invited me out, I'm going. You know, and then one day you wake up and you start hearing what's being said. And then you might say, I want to hang out with these people. And I might not want to hang out with these people. And I remember we were all in New York. We were at this place called Sidewalk Cafe. And it was about 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. And all these guys that I had been to dinner with tons of nights, I start hearing these jokes that they're saying. And, you know, some of them are racist jokes, you know, some of them are not favorable towards Jews. And I remember just sitting around looking at them going, I got to go. I'll see you later. I paid my bill. I got up. I never saw them again. Yeah. And because at that moment I realized that's not who I want to be around, and that's okay who they are.
Right.
You know,
we just said when we were coming in, my father, you know, it always goes back to what my father used to tell me when I was in grade school. Don't tell me what kind of kid you are. Show me who you're hanging around with. You know, I mean, that's you know who you know. Water seeks its own level, and I'm only as good as the company that I keep. So
when I was drinking, I used to people that didn't drink. I was almost petrified. Like, you what? Kind of a loser. Like, oh my God. You know, I was like, oh, look at this creep. He's not drinking.
I feel like that was sobriety if I'm with a shrink at a meal.
Yeah, and then you when, like,
no offense, Doc.
When you stop drinking though, like you go to parties and people there's such an issue with you don't drink, and women like you have issues. Why don't you drink? Why don't you drink? And it's like, I don't think I'm the one with the issue. You apparently, this is the 30th time you've asked me what my issue is. You apparently have the issue. You know, I just said, I didn't say you couldn't drink. Right. I just said, I'm not going to make an ass out of myself tonight. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, women always ask me, they always say the same thing whenever I start dating. They go, it's okay that you don't drink, but do you mind if I do? I go, I prefer it.
Yeah.
You know?
Let's get gorgeous.
You know, please, drink as much as you can.
I actually ordered a bottle of wine at the table.
I actually stuck roofies in it, so please, drink up.
Wow.
No, but it's
recorded for the evidence.
Yeah, no, but it's one of those things that it's like when you're getting, right, that never happened.
Right.
But when you're getting sober, these are the things that are asked. It's like people say to you, girls all the time say, why do you still go to meetings? Or people say that a lot. Why do you still go to meetings? And I always give this analogy, and I say, well, if you went to a doctor and every doctor was freshly out of medical school, would you feel that comfortable? You know, and it's like, imagine if you went to AA and everybody there had 30 days sober. you know, you wouldn't exactly think it was the most successful organization ever.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, we keep going back because people did it for us.
Right.
There's that consistency.
Yeah.
You know, I had no consistency when I was out there.
Well,
And
it is different. I mean, you know, like dating when you're sober, when you really, it makes intimacy really intimate.
Well, there's intimacy. There's intimacy. There's intimacy.
Yeah, you're like, wow, this is woo.
You actually care.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time you had sex sober? Like, when I was 15, it wasn't by choice, and you're like, wow, this is really gnarly. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a different walk.
Wow,
so
this feels
it
really
takes some-
good.
Yeah. You're like, what is
All
this?
these tastes and textures.
Right,
you're
guys,
like, I didn't know that
we're-
was there. This is amazing.
We're going to
you know?
head out for a break real quick here. We'll be back in a few minutes with our great panel of guests.
And the number is 877-830-830. That's 877-830-830.
Clean Radio.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Boy, Judas singing. We're going to have to intersperse that with Bob Forrest singing. I think.
Because I got high. Because I got high. That's the song.
You
I was going to go to school, but I was high. It's like the story of my life. I could have cheated, but I could have passed, but I was high.
That's Afro.
Not high, drunk.
What's the guy's
Afro Man.
name? Afro Man, that's right. Yes, I actually really like that. And it's got the
Yeah,
chicken
yeah.
in there. Yeah.
There's like the clean version and there's
Right,
the unclean version.
Right. It's definitely one of the better songs, though, if you're drinking.
I can't hear you for some reason in my...
Really?
Yeah, now I can. And
Maybe I'm just not speaking properly.
we're
with
in the
my
studio with a hysterical
mic.
comedian.
Yes.
Yes.
So did you sign a pact, or you just decided to? Because there's that whole segment also of, isn't it with Christianity where they sign it like the Billy Graham Pact?
Oh no, I mean, I never. We're not like fundamentalist Baptists. My family drinks. They brew their own beer. You know, I mean, the interesting about my parents is both their fathers were pretty abusive alcoholics, and they had both done really dramatic, intense change, and they both made a very dedicated, purposeful change in their lives to raise their kids better and not to drink like that. And they don't. But they both have a brother who, I mean, I guess you're 4 times, or what is it? It's genetic. Mm-hmm. So you're like 4 times more prone to become, you know, a substance abuser or alcoholic if you have someone directly in your
What
family.
are the latest stats? You know?
Yeah, I think he's about right.
My mom
about
told me
4
for years.
times.
She's like, basically, you're playing with fire. You know, it also takes a teenager 3 to 4 months to become addicted to a substance, is where it takes an adult 3 to 4 years. And these are things. My parents are both retired teachers, very dedicated to their kids and family. So it's just, again, it's one of those things where it was no pact. It was just, I guess it was just. My career, my life was not going where it was, where I wanted to go, and I was not really happy, and I knew that in order to make a more meaningful, path here in life, I need to make a change.
What I think is great, though, too, I think, I think when you're content with who you are, there are you're okay with other people getting help however they need. Yeah. And there's no difference between religion and there's no difference between people in AA. You know, it's a lot of people don't know why they are. Right. You know, and those are the people that can't handle differing opinions. And, I'm from a community where they can't handle differing opinions.
But, we even see this in the treatment community. It's one of the things that I've been really trying to reach out, and that's one of the great things about this show and having a lot of different types of professionals on here, as well as different types of people with experiences in their own recovery, and that there's different ways for people to get sober. It isn't necessarily just one way. And then there's different types of people with different types of illnesses. And, I actually started my career working in acute care psychiatric facilities, and where people had extreme psychiatric illnesses, and a lot of them self-medicated secondarily with substance abuse issues. So for me, I didn't really ever see substance abuse issues as being a primary concern. It was always about treating primary psychiatric disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar illness, and then you'd see the substance abuse sort of secondary, if at all. Most people thought it would dissipate, and I think even in the psychiatric community for a long time, there was a belief that was always the case, that substance abuse was just purely secondary to some underlying psychiatric illness. And you see a lot of people now, I guess there's a few rehabs out there that are advertising they have a cure for addiction, and it's funny, you read their books, and their cure for addiction is deal with all your psychiatric problems and then don't drink. Right. Like,
Right.
Like that's the cure. Yeah. Like, you know, like
right. And then there's a major problem. You know, it's you know, so I think
what are my psychiatric problems and how and where do I get help? First of all,
right.
What a
it was like I heard
theory,
somebody one time say, they go, you know, I was going to be dead, but I was going to understand it. You know, and you know, I had been to so many therapists before I had ever gotten sober, and you know, I mean, all of them would say the same. I was always that kid in school that didn't do well, but so that had to get assessed, and I would always ace the assessment. But nobody ever like was curious, like, you know, let's go see why he's not doing well in school. Let's go check the home, you know. And I have the most caring parents, I should say, you know, and but there's yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I think one of the things
is
it's amazing to me how early we still are in scientifically into looking at addiction and psychiatric disorders and comorbidity of the two. And
do you believe it's because of the anonymity of it, or it's the?
Well, I mean, certainly, you know, if you look just in dollar volume, psychiatric treatment in the United States is $77 billion annually, and
AA is free.
And treatment of substance abuse disorders is about $22 billion annually in the U.S. So, you know, the psychiatric market is 3 times the size.
The lobby is way more powerful.
Yeah, and then there's this combination down the middle, which I think is, you know, fairly significant. And there's been a lot of debate, and there's a lot of debate ongoing. But really, one of the conversations I keep having with people that are pure psych or pure substance abuse or pure abstinence is that really we're all on the same side of the table. The goal here is to end pain and suffering and to deal with illnesses that are either, you know, psychiatric or substance abuse. They're all biological as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter really how you get to the point of being ill. The question is, what's the solution?
Something very interesting that Dr. Berger was talking about in the beginning of the show with, what was it, with 2 years, you know, the relapse.
Yeah, right. Flips.
And it flips. Yeah. My first therapist, well, not my first therapist, but one of my therapists in New York, used to not treat people until they were sober for 2 years. Yeah. Because she'd say, work the 12 steps, get sober, and then come see me. You know, don't use me as your, you know, sponsor. Don't use me as your 12 steps.
Well, it's unfortunate. It used to be in psychiatric hospitals, the minimum length of stay was 30, 60 days. And they did that just to baseline people, just to get people to the point where they knew what they were dealing with. Yeah. So, you know, they'd be free of substances, and you'd have them generally off most medications or take them down to a reasonable amount, and then you'd see where they were and what the real diagnosis is. And now in the medical profession, with hospitals, because of insurance and where we are with the state of insurance reform, as I like to call it, instead of healthcare reform,
because they don't want to lose their insurance benefits, right? Once if you go to
rehab, happens too. But the length of stay is really short now. I mean, your average length of stay in a psychiatric hospital is about 8 days.
Is that what it is? It's dropped to 8 days.
It's about 8 days.
That's amazing.
I call them spin dries. You know, it's just like right. You know, they're just spinning you real quick and getting you out. The facility I went to was a 28-day program. But I just have an interesting side spiritual story. A friend of David and I was just on his way home. Todd C. was listening to the radio, and he went to a friend to learn how to meditate yesterday. And the guy sends him quotes every day, and he sent him this quote today about the 2 wolves this morning.
Oh wow!
Right, this is crazy, right? And but this is one of those things where this is a friend of ours that's fairly newly sober, and you know, he was feeling not right. He was just feeling kind of off today, kind of a bad day, lousy day, whatever. And he read the message. It was a text message about the 2 wolves, and then he wasn't feeling good. He stopped by a friend's house tonight and just meditated with a buddy of his and meditated on the 2 wolves. And then he got in his car and he started driving. I mean, that stuff is like just like
that happens to me with the Steve Miller Band. I don't know why, but everywhere I go,
you're so 80s, dude. That's hilarious.
That's 70s.
I feel as though we're all like.
Connected.
We're all spiritually connected.
That's true.
And the longer I stay away from alcohol and drugs and things that I get clearer, and then I can see things from a completely different perspective, and I'm also connected with my you know, with with friends and with people I just met David tonight, but
Right.
you know, I'm very
Brian, you know, I loved your acting. I loved you in The Town. I loved you in Brotherhood. I think you just do an
Yeah.
incredible job. And
Thank you.
And you know, acting to me seems like such a difficult art form.
Well, I think alcoholism and addiction is like preschool for acting.
It's like the actor's studio.
I consider it, you know, I consider my disease a gift, and the fact that, you know, I have all these things and situations and things that happen in my life a gift, because I can draw on them and use those situations and circumstances to make something real.
So we see so many actors out there that, you know, have died from drug abuse, or it seems like they, you know, they claim method acting and they've got to immerse themselves in a role. What do you say to people like that? Do you ever get young actors coming up to you and asking you, like, you know, because a lot of the roles you play are pretty gritty. I mean, it's not like you're playing.
You have to be willing to. I mean, my coach, I studied with Candace Silvers for since day one, and
Is that Phil Silvers?
And she said, yeah, it's Phil Silvers' daughter, and she always said, if you're here to feel good, then you're in the wrong business. And because, you know, a lot of the interesting roles and different characters, you have to be willing. Me personally, I feel as an actor, I have to be willing to go to a dark place, and to bring that to bring that character alive and make it believable. And but there's different. I mean, there's Meisner and there's Roy London. Candace is Roy London based, and then there's Meisner and there's Method, and Kevin Spacey recently said in an interview that, you know, to find truth in the character, and so different actors have their, you know, different ways of getting there. But
So you visit it, you just don't live there.
I used to feel that, like,
oh no, I live. When I'm working, I'm in it and I'm being it.
Right, but then when you leave it, it's
sometimes
is it
I have
hard
to go to my trailer for a little while.
Yeah, because that's got to be really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I've had friends call me in between shots on set, and I'm working, especially on Brotherhood, because that guy, he was very dark, that character, and I've gone off on friends on the phone, like, and not even really remember, and you know, so, you know, that it's to go in and out is difficult at times for me, anyways, and sometimes it takes me a while to just to get out of it. And I have to give myself that time, you know.
I was actually with this designer today, actually, it was actually a political fundraiser, which I probably shouldn't mention, but and she was talking about how she had read a book when she was young, and then she had just read it again lately after like 30 years. And she couldn't believe how many little parts of this book that she had read 30 years before were like actually parts of her personality now, and that she didn't know it. You know, that these things that she thought were from herself actually had started when she had read this book when she was young. And when she was young, she hadn't read it knowing how it would affect her.
Was it Judy Blume?
No, it wasn't Judy Blume.
Atlas Shrugged.
But I wonder that with actors, you know, where is the line between yourself and the character? And you know, I mean, has Charlie Sheen become one of? I mean, you know, look at him at Wall Street. And how could you not have played that role in Wall Street and have that not affect who you are?
He said too that, you know, that a lot of these actors, they become celebrated for their dysfunction, you know, and when they have all the representation, the people surrounding them are making all this money, they don't want this person to change because they're making a fortune off of them.
It's like a horse.
I mean, they were buying John Belushi his blow when he was on Saturday Night Live. You know, they were providing it for him, and
he was paying people to keep it away, and they were paying people.
They were paying people to put it. Yeah,
I used to think when I was drinking, I was like, I'm a better actor, I'm edgier, I'm much more volatile, and I'm gonna find stuff, and you know, like some crazy Sam Shepard play, and you got to be all this dysfunctional crazy. But that's a lie. You know, now that I've been sober, and my work is 1,000% better, because number one, you have so much more clarity and honesty with it.
Right.
When you're hungover, you're delusional. You don't have access to all this stuff. And now that you have this clarity and this honesty with yourself and what's going on with this character too, this better understanding, you access stuff so much easier, as you're saying, well, you can go in and out of this guy. Or you really, honestly, when you go to that dark place, you're going to that dark place. Or
the fact that you could do brain synapses with your fingers.
That was pretty amazing.
That was pretty. Yeah, that was pretty great.
I saw the serotonin and the norepinephrine.
I did too.
But
you know what I mean? It's like it's such a better. I mean, the real.
I guess that was a joke.
But you know, here's the thing. You know, we do. You know, it's. Most actors don't make it that are on drugs and alcohol, and that's the reality. It's like you could look at the early '80s; they had some of the finest the greatest actors. You know, whether it was Mickey Rourke, whether it was. And you're on the air. We're like,
yeah, no, we're trying to decide our breaks.
Oh,
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, we will.
Why don't you give us our phone number?
The number here is 877-830-830. That's 877-830-830.
We're gonna take a quick break. It's Clean Radio.
Is your drinking getting worse? Are you taking more pills than prescribed? Do you want to quit, but quitting on your own isn't working? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040. Our 24-hour staff is here to help you. You can also check us out at cleantreatmentcenter.com. That's clean with a K. Addiction is progressive. The sooner you reach out for help, the better the chances are for recovery. Call Clean Treatment Center today at 888-601-6040.
Welcome back to Clean Radio. We're actually going to start off this last segment. We got a call from Rick. Rick, are you there?
Hey.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, so I called back a couple weeks ago, actually, and we talked about how do you know if you're an alcoholic? I don't know if you remember.
Sure.
But I actually have a question about ecstasy. I was wondering if you could help me out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ask away.
So I have a girlfriend, okay?
That's great.
And her name is Subu.
Subu?
Yeah. She's actually, the name sounds just the way, she looks just the way the name sounds, actually.
Okay.
Is this going somewhere, Rick?
Yeah, you got it. You got an actual question, or?
Yes, I do. I actually do. So she started doing ecstasy, and she starts putting it up in her ass, saying that it'll work quicker.
Okay, well, bye, Rick.
Thank you. We have our first. We're honored. That's like our first
call ever.
best prank call.
It's good as at the end of the show.
And what's great is that what's great about radio is there is a dump button, and you know,
if you can't make yourself laugh, who can you make laugh?
Right.
Keep ripping and tearing, Buckshot. That was hilarious.
I was treating a medical doctor once, and he had esophageal varices, so he couldn't drink anymore, right?
Right.
Actually, what he did is he put alcohol and gave himself an enema. I am not kidding you. The guy had to have alcohol so bad that he was willing to do anything.
And it was Stevie Nicks that did it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Good. Andy.
But, you know, getting back to just quickly, it's like growing up, my heroes were like my TV shows that I'd watch were like, I remember seeing Die Hard and watching Bruce Willis smoke in an airport, drinking like a whiskey sour, or what I thought was probably a whiskey sour, going, man, he's cool.
But see, the point that I want to make with this is how we would go to any lengths to get high, and in any way we would. Yep. See, I mean, that's part of what this disease does to us, you know, is that we will do anything in the world. One of the things I talk about in 12 Stupid Things is that if you want to get well, you've got to approach it with as much commitment as you had when you were out there getting loaded. And if you don't come in with that same kind of energy, if you don't go after it with the same kind of zest and zeal that you had before, you're not going to do it. You're not going to make it.
It's a lifestyle change.
It is, isn't it?
It's a walk.
It really is, man.
I agree.
And you got to take it on. I mean, you got to go all in, like we say before. We went all in before. With our disease, all of us go all in. I mean, we throw it all.
It's
on
amazing
the table.
how quickly people will walk to a top of a hill to get drugs, but when they're sober, all of a sudden, like the idea of walking to the top of the hill becomes like this big thing.
Well, now they're going to negotiate.
Right.
Do I really need to go to the hill? Do I really need to do that to get well? Do I really have to go to meetings?
I'm not taking a bus.
Right. It's like, for how long? That's like the great newcomer question, but for how long? You know, and it's like you never...
Did you ask that before when you were using
when
drugs?
it's like, for how long? How long do I have to do this commitment for? That's why like the hardest commitments are the GSR commitments, you know, like you did the general service commitments that are like 2 years. But what's great is if you actually do that commitment, you'll be sober, you know,
I had this kid tell me that recently he was newly sober, and he says, you know, I'm just really bored. And I said, you know, I have a friend of mine who I got sober with in '85 who's doing first-degree murder right now. And he's really bored.
I bet.
Sitting in his cell. He's bored. That's boring. You know, like, I mean, really, everything is going to be what you make out of it, you know. So I was taught early on, go out, go dancing. You can't hide from it. It's everywhere. So go have fun. Find some people and some peers that are having a good time, that are having a blast, going to dinner, going out, going to clubs, go dancing, travel, take a trip. And I've surfed all around the world. I just, find a hobby. That's another big thing. Find something that you love to do. And
sober's boring. You're not being sober. I mean,
right.
I started boxing, and I went to this gym with this guy. He fought Lennox Lewis. He literally eats babies for breakfast. And I was in there just punching the bag like, he was like, "Go home, dude. Call it a day." I'm like, but you find some. If it takes like 2 months, then go do that. But invest yourself, like you said. You went and you drank and you partied. Well, why not try and take that same energy and make it really happen? If you're bored sober, you're not really living sober.
Well, I used to hear people say, if you're bored, you know why you're bored? It's because you're boring.
Yeah, live your life. You go out, you dance, you chase women, you do things, you still act. You're on set, you're meeting these beautiful women, you're traveling, you're sober. Are you bored? No, you're having a great time, right?
I had to learn how to say yes. I really decided anytime somebody would ask me something, up to reason, of course, I would say yes. And it's like I got sober in Brooklyn. We'd all go on the Cyclone whenever somebody celebrated a certain amount of time sober. Whatever it was like 7 years on the Cyclone in Coney Island 7 times. Yeah. And then we'd go like jump in the ocean in like 10-degree weather. And it was like these experiences that and it was cold, but it was like fun, going on that Cyclone, going to Coney Island, and just because I said yes, when I said yes, I ended up in some of the greatest places. Right. I mean, I've been skydiving sober. Right. I jumped out of a plane sober, and that's pretty cool. Yeah.
My buddy Paul C, he got sober when he was 14 years old. We get going early in Boston, and he told me this, gave me this expression a couple of years back. I use it all. This is what I live by now, and it's I go where I'm invited. You invited me here tonight, so I'm coming. I'm showing up, and where I just go where I'm invited, and that's for me. That's just like you said, say yes. I want to invite your son.
Also,
say yes.
people we take you're like, oh, I got to get sober forever. For how long? For 2 years? For 3 years? We put all this pressure on yourself. You already lose before you even walk out the door. Yeah. Like in Hell Week with Navy SEALs, I read one thing that really resonated with me, and that's that they tell people, don't think about the whole week, because if you think about the entirety of Hell Week, you're going to quit right now.
Right.
Stay on this one evolution, finish this evolution, and get through this, and go on to the next one. Think about what's at hand right now. If you think about your marriage and your job and your career and your
Live
kids,
in the moment.
then you're of course you're going to be like, take it.
Well, talking about living in the moment, we're actually running out of time.
Great segue.
So I really want to just take a little time at the end of this show to actually thank our guests, because last time we just cut everybody off real quick. So Dr. Alan Berger, thank you so much. Really recommend people check out his books.
I'm going to be reading your books.
They're all on Amazon.com.
Yes, they are.
Yep, and go check those out. And you also have a great conference coming up, evolutionofaddiction.com.
Evolutionofaddiction.com. Yep, December 8th through 11th at the Westin LAX Hotel.
And we're going to put that on our Clean site so people could also
everybody
find
can
it.
go to Facebook and enter Clean Radio in the Pages section. All this information will be there. Also, cleanradio.com is going to be up shortly, hopefully this week, which should be good. And then also our other guest, Brian
S.
Andrew has a hard time with diction sometimes.
Scannell. Is that correct?
Scannell. The cops say Scannell. So
it's like Stephen J. Cannell. He used to worry this one of the same thing. Stephen J. Cannell.
It's that Boston thing. I hear it one way and then I hear it the other.
Yeah, it's different. It is. Right? It's true.
I just love your work. Looking forward to seeing work in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
And then, of course, David Forseth. What more can I say? Go see him tomorrow. That's what I need to say.
Okay, yeah.
Right? University of Irvine.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook too, so it's an honor to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Clean Radio. Judah, any parting words?
God bless, Godspeed.
Wow.
And I love my mother.
It's all about Judah's mother.
Yeah. It's all about my mom. My mom, yeah. It's all about pleasing.
It was a great show. We'll see you next week with great guests. Check us out on cleanradio.com or on Facebook at Clean Radio. That's Clean with a K. Everybody have a good night. In the dope show.
Suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call Clean Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.